Welcome to episode 19 of Action RPG game in Unity. Item drops from chest. So today we want to introduce an item drops. I downloaded from OpenGameArt a chest 3D object and those cool looking item icons. The chest was in Blender file format, so I had to convert it for us to use in the Unity into FBX file format. The converted file will be linked in the description and link to the item icons will be there too. Download them. Okay. It gets really crowded right now in the root folder. Let's clean it. Move the scripts into scripts folder. Icons into icons. Models into models. Good. Now let's put a model of our chest on the screen. Oh, there is Blender leftovers. We need to delete them. Set the texture. Good. Now what we want to make our character open the chest. Let's move the chest to the test area scene, because our chest is not an essential component of the game. Make sure when you moving chest around, you're moving the main parent object, not the chest model or armature. Good. Let's make an animation for our chest to stay closed by cutting existing close animation at the end like this. Make sure you have at least one frame of animation. Select the chest and drag and drop animation into Inspector to create a new animator controller. Make sure you're doing this to the chest main parent object. Double-click on newly created animator controller. Inside, create an open state by adding open animation. Add transition based on the open parameter. So we want to interact with this chest and open it. We have a component specifically created to identify interactable objects on the scene, called interactable object, and inside we have a delegate set up. I don't like how we're subscribing to public delegate from the interactable object. Let's wrap the subscription process into the method. After the changes, we should be able to pick up the items on the ground. Good. Prefab the pickup item. Good. This should be a good demonstration of how you can add a new interactable object with ease into your game. You add the interactable object component and then add a new component responsible for what will happen when you interact with the object. So later on we might introduce things like a lever which opens the door, or like a quest pedestal or some other thing. Now when we click on the chest, we want to open it. No problem. Select the chest and create an add item chest interactable object component. Inside, create a new method called openChest. Pass the inventory as a parameter. Inside openChest we want to animate chest opening, so catch the animator. Then in openChest set the bool of open on animator controller. Make doubly sure that you type the open same as your parameter in animator controller. Subscribe the openChest method to the interactable object. This should be it. Let's test this. To interact with the object needs to have a collider. Good. Prefab the chest. Let's spawn a few more copies of the chest. Good. Please consider supporting me on Patreon. You will get cool perks like being featured like those cool people you can see right now on the screen, or access to project files on Patreon. As I said, I added those icons for items. Texture type of the icon should be sprite. Sprite mode multiple, because there is multiple icons on the sprite sheet. Filter mode is situational. Most of the time I would say set it to be point no filter, especially if you are using pixel art icons, and no compression. Open Sprite Editor. If you see a message like this, open Package Manager. find 2D sprite package and install it. Now you can slice our sprite sheet into individual sprites. Good. Now we have those sprites for later when we will be adding more items into our game. Let's make it possible to drop an item from the chest. Inside the item chest interactable object, create reference to the drop item prefab. Let's reference it. If you do it like this, you will only reference the prefab on the one object. But our chests are prefabs, and prefabs share their settings between each other. So when you have prefabs on the scene, especially multiple of them, you want to change their setting inside the prefab editor rather than on the scene. Double click on the chest prefab in the project. It will open the prefab editor and reference pick up item here. Now look on the scene. Good. As you can see, each chest shares the updated settings between each other. On the manager, create another new component called item spawn manager. The manager will be responsible for spawning item to pick up on the map. So make serialized reference to the item prefab. And then create method called spawn item, which will spawn an item in the position. Here we want to convert the position from position to spawn into the position on the surface of the terrain, where the item will be spawned. To do this, cast the ray from the upward position downwards. Make the ray make the hit information variable, then call physics raycast. Cast it only against terrain. To do this, we will use a physical layer for terrain. So we need to define this terrain layer. In the Unity, select the plane we use for terrain and create a new physical layer called terrain. Then set the plane and its walls to be terrain. Now we need to be able to call this spawn item method. For now, let's define item spawn manager as a singleton. In the item chest interactable object, we can call spawn item. Instead of prefab, we can just store reference to the item we're trying to spawn. And we need to generate random position. This position should be around the chest position. So let's get the chest position and then add a little randomization to this position. So we're creating a position somewhere around the chest. Create serialized field random drop range. Then use random range to add to the position of the chest. So the higher this number, the further away your item can drop from the chest. Set the item prefab for this item spawn manager. Something is wrong. I wonder why it doesn't work. Let's try to do it a little different. In the item spawn manager, let's pass the length of the array as infinite and serialize the layer of the mask. Let's test this. Good, as you can see I can interact with the chest and they will drop items. There is an issue that item can spawn on the walls or inside the chest. We will deal with this later. Right now we have a funny issue of that we can keep clicking on the chest even if it's open and it will keep spawning items. So in the item chest interactable object, we want to introduce a simple boolean variable is opened. If it is true, then don't execute the open chest. Let's test this. Good, it works. Each item for now is the same. We will expand upon this in the next episode. Good, this is it for this episode. Special thank you to David Fahy, The Salt Hashdu, Stormbreaker 9000 for their generous support. With best regards, see you in the next episode.